I remember like 4 or 5 days in of not drinking, and Jack, one night we were just kind of talking about it and how I felt so far, 4 or 5 days in. And he looked me straight in the eyes and he said, he's all, dude, I bet you don't drink ever again.
Holics.com, in partnership with Heartsupport and the Global Recovery Initiatives Foundation, is proud to present High Notes, a podcast about addiction and recovery in the music business. I'm your host, James Shotwell. My guest today is Nick Martin, the rhythm guitar player for Sleeping with Sirens, who also has a long history in the world of rock and roll. Beginning in the early 2000s, Nick rose to popularity fronting the San Diego hardcore band Underminded. And by the end of the 2000s, he had worked with groups such as Norma Jean, Slick Shoes, and Chiodos. Nick then joined the supergroup Isles and Glaciers and helped form the band Destroy, Rebuild, Until God Shows, which is also known as Drugs, a name that is fairly on the nose considering the conversation that we're going to have today. In 2013, after Drugs broke up, Nick joined the band Sleeping with Sirens, a group that he remains in to this day. Nick was already a road warrior at this point, and he'd already experienced quite a bit of success. But something about being part of Sleeping with Sirens gave him a sense of purpose that he'd never really felt before. That feeling led Nick to reconsider his life and the decisions that he'd made. While he didn't really have any regrets, he knew that there was room for improvement, and he began a journey that would not only change his life, but the life of every single person around him, including his bandmates. When I call him on the phone to discuss this, he's quick to tell me about a recent milestone he's reached.
So now I've been 2 years sober as of April 25th. Yeah, that marks 2 years. And it came and went really, really quickly. I made the conscious decision to stop drinking, and I didn't set any sort of timeline on it. It wasn't like I'm quitting forever or I'm quitting for 60 days to see how that feels. Like I literally just, I woke up and just said, I don't feel like drinking today. And it was just I realized later on that I just took it as like a day-to-day approach. Like all I have control of is right now, today, and I'm just not going to do it today. And then that kind of spawned into a week and 2 weeks. And then all of a sudden it was 2 years later and I haven't had any alcohol,
It's funny that you kind of gave your explanation for how it started, because we were sitting around last night talking about all the other guests that have been on the show and like everyone's story. And something I usually ask after someone tells me how long it's been is the first thing I say is like, what was it like right before you made this decision? Because sometimes it's like, I learned I was having a kid, or, I woke up and realized I didn't remember the last month. And yours is a little bit, and so I was like, what do you think Nick's is? Like, you've known him a long time. Why? And I was like, I honestly don't know. I didn't see him for like a year, and then he came back and he was like, I'm sober now. And I was like, oh, okay. I didn't know if there was some really dark period that preceded your decision to stop drinking.
It was dark. It's interesting that actually over the past week, I've had conversations with my therapist and with my wife, and still coming to terms with being honest with myself about why I stopped. I think that has been a journey within itself. And that's part of a big reason why I wanted to stop drinking too, is I just wasn't being honest, like literally I was lying. I was lying to myself. I was lying to my wife, to my band about, where I was at and how bad it really was. And like I said, I'm still coming to terms with that and understanding that a lot more. I still catch myself saying like, it wasn't that bad. And like, I wasn't as bad as everybody else was, but at the end of the day, like it was bad, like I was drinking to excess, and I was drinking a lot. I would drink all day. You know what I mean? Like, and it was just, this goes into a whole other conversation in itself of, being in an industry where it's not frowned upon. It's encouraged. Like I always say that it's easier being in a band on tour. It's easier to find a bottle of beer versus finding a bottle of water. It's because it's that readily available. It's always there. So it's a norm. So if you're up in the morning and you just had your coffee and someone cracks open a beer, no one goes, dude, what are you doing? Like, if anything, it encourages other people, and people are like, oh, well, I'll crack a beer with you. And it becomes an extremely toxic, like vicious cycle if you continue to do that day in and day out. And I realized like how bad that was for me. And I knew that it was time to make a change. Like, I wasn't being the best version of me for myself. I wasn't being the best version of me for my band. I wasn't being the best version of me for my wife. And why not make those changes is really what what ran through my head. And the option to be the best me just far outweighed everything else. And it took me a long time to get to that point, and a lot of shit to happen in my life to be like, I don't want to do this anymore.
It may not surprise you to learn that many artists fall into addictive behaviors following their first taste of success. In the case of Nick Martin, however, he was in music for over a decade before he really started to notice a problem. And that came right around the time he joined a band that would be known as Drugs.
I feel like my partying like really became a thing and escalated once I was in the band Drugs. But alcohol like has always been a part of my life. Like, even as a kid, like growing up in an environment where alcohol was never frowned upon, it was always around. I grew up with a family that drank and did it, at on every occasion, kids' birthdays, every holiday you could think of, on the weekends, like family getting together, and just being in an environment where it was normalized. So I guess like that this is me now, 37 years old, and now being in therapy, like really digging in and figuring out all of these things in my life that have led me to where I am, and how, specifically with alcohol, how my whole entire life, it was, like I said, it was a normalized thing. So for me personally, like getting into drinking, and when it really started to ramp up was when I was in Drugs. And that was just what we did day in and day out, was just get hammered. It was it was fun and it was like a party, but looking back on that now, like a lot of that was, just self-medicating to get through the stresses of, certain people that we were around. That's what quote unquote like helped me like cope with all that and get through that. But realizing that really deep down, like the things I was coping with were much deeper and had to do with events in my life growing up as a kid that I hadn't really faced head on until over the last like couple of years, and specifically over the last 6+ months of being in therapy and like really diving into these things in my life that, that affected me. And I felt like drinking wasn't a problem and helped me cope, and it was fun, and just realized that it wasn't. It was ultimately like destroying me, and it was destroying my relationships. It was destroying my communication skills. And now I'm like rewiring and refiguring myself out and going back to just like being the best version of me possible. And that drinking that I really started getting into heavily in Drugs definitely carried out once I was in Sleeping with Sirens, like that just, I kind of like picked up where I left off in Drugs, and it just became a habitual habit for me.
To give you a better idea of what Nick's life was like around this time, I'm going to share with you a memory that he and I have together. In February 2011, shortly after Drugs released their debut album, the band invited me to cover a video shoot for their single Sex Life. If you're unfamiliar with the song, here's an acoustic clip of the group performing it shortly after the album's release. The video for Sex Life was meant to capture an insane house party, like the kind of thing that you only see in the movies. And that's exactly what the set devolved into. Over the course of a day, 20 to 30 people were shoved into a tiny house in the suburbs of Detroit, and everyone had the time of their life. There was drinking, there was smoking, there was dancing, there was loud music. It was absolute and total chaos.
It was, dude. It was. And I was intoxicated that whole entire time, dude. That was a legit house party that, like you said, went on all day, all night, and it was just a party. And it was, like I said, it was something that was just part of, quote unquote, part of the job. And dude, we were in a band called Drugs. I mean, it was always a constant party, and people always wanted to party with us. And it was just, I look back on it now, and those were hazy years. They're definitely super hazy, and it wasn't even that long, but it felt like eternity with everything that we went through as a band. And yeah, it was toxic, dude. It was really, really toxic.
The one moment from this day that I will never forget happened around sunset. Just as things were beginning to get out of control, Nick approached me in the middle of the living room, handed me a beer, and asked me if I was having a good time. I told him that of course I was. It was the best day of my life. And he said, "That's good to hear, because this is a drugs party. And everyone has a good time at a drugs party."
Right? Yeah, but that's true. That's how it was. And I mean, and I don't want to knock that time in my life, because I did have a blast, and everyone in that band, I still speak with for the most part. Some people I don't, but we really do cherish that. We had something really, really special. So I never want to take away from that, but it was definitely really difficult too. And that drove me to not be the best version of me. And that's when I felt like my health really started to deteriorate a lot. And I was putting on a lot of weight and just not giving a shit about myself. And that showed,
You had this amazing ability around that time to ride this wave of stuff, because right before Drugs, you guys did Isles and Glaciers, and you were with some of those same guys, rolls over into Drugs, and then comes Sleeping with Sirens. So there was a period between 2010 and I guess now really where you haven't really slowed down at all to catch your breath.
No, not really, dude. I mean, it's been, I've almost half of my life now, I've been in music, I've been in the industry. So it's definitely been a huge chunk of my life. And I've taken little breaks here and there. And even when I took a break after Drugs and before I joined Sleeping with Sirens, I wasn't in a good place. And I was drinking, at that time I got super into drinking double IPAs, and the San Diego craft beer thing was just popping off. And I was running a merchandising print shop, and we were printing merch for all these beer companies and getting all this free beer. And I look back even on that chunk of time and how unhealthy it was for me, and how sad I was. I wasn't happy.
Nick has mentioned how therapy plays a role in his recovery several times, but I was a little apprehensive to ask him about it. For many people, talking about therapy is something you just don't do. The relationship that most people share with their therapist is one that is unlike anything else in their lives. It's a place where they go to be their true selves, to express thoughts and feelings they may otherwise never feel comfortable sharing. And so the idea of discussing that can make some people uncomfortable. Thankfully, Nick was more than willing to tell us how he got into therapy and why it's so important to him now.
I got into therapy in October of last year. My wife had started shortly before that, and I saw the great positive things it was doing for her, and I just felt like there was no better time than now to get into that. I was already open to the idea, and I had already been, in the last 2 years, really on a self-discovery journey of figuring myself out. Once you're sober, once you're not drinking all day long, holy hell, you see the world and you see everything around you with clear vision, and I started digging a lot more and reading a lot more books on just self-help, self-awareness, self-care, and jumping into therapy was something that I was really I was ready for. And I talk about it with my wife a bit, that if I was still drinking like I was, I wouldn't be where I am today, personally. There's no way that I would have understood myself in the way that I do now after not drinking for 2 years. And therapy has only helped me beyond, I can't even put into words like how much it's helped me. Like, I look forward to my weekly FaceTime calls with my therapist. Like, that is like a joy every single week to be able to do that. And being able to do that while I'm on tour as well has just done so much for me. And it's really helped me figure myself out more, like organize my shit better, and talking about my childhood, and talking about the lack of self-confidence and my communication skills, and just being honest with others and being honest with myself. And therapy has been nothing but a positive thing in my life. And I feel like if I could encourage and get every single human being in the world to try therapy, like, I think that it would make a world of difference for so many people. I think that therapy has this kind of negative connotation for a lot of people, that they feel like it's, going in to see someone that's just going to like crack you open and spill your guts out onto a table and just completely dissect you and change you and all of this. But it's not that. It's really important for me to be able to talk to a professional that is unbiased and can really help me understand the things that I feel and the things that I've gone through and how those affect me, and how I can work positively moving forward to not even necessarily fix those things, but just understand those things and be more aware of them, and just be the best version of me that I can possibly be.
A common problem that people on the road to recovery encounter is that they don't know how to fill their time. Once you cut drugs and alcohol from your life, you realize that there were hours that you spent on a regular basis getting high or getting drunk, and now you just don't know what to do with yourself. And if you can't figure out something, the likelihood of a relapse is fairly high. Recovery organizations often suggest that individuals try working out, or explore different hobbies, or just spend time with sober family and friends, all of which are great suggestions. But for Nick, what worked best was actually a combination of things, which he explains here.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like, maybe this is like a cheesy answer, but honestly, once I stopped drinking, I just started putting more time into myself. And I think that was what ultimately I wasn't doing. And that meant, like reading self-help books and following accounts on social media that, help me better my journey and understanding myself. And I got back into reading a lot more. I think it really helped me focus on building a different routine for myself. I had to completely change my habits on tour. It wasn't, because I realized that going to bars and drinking on the bus and drinking after the show and going to another bar was the norm on tour. And I had to completely focus myself in where I was going to put that energy. And, I started doing more stuff. Like, I think ultimately I really focused more on putting a positive message out into the world. So I really started pushing the phrase much love, and making necklaces, and venturing into like things that people could wear, or I released a journal as well that people could read through and be able to jot down their thoughts and their emotions, and have positive affirmations and different sayings throughout the book to help them, make them feel like they weren't alone. And I think that was something that became a focus of mine once I stopped drinking, was while I'm bettering myself and I feel like I'm in a better place, why not spread that positivity and really help other people realize that they're not alone, no matter who you are, where you come from, what your background is. Like, we all experience struggles in life, and that we can overcome them. And being able to share my story a bit and spread a positive message alongside with that, I think that that's something I've really put a lot more focus in, and things that I kind of implemented into my life after getting sober.
When someone is caught in the throes of addiction, everyone connected to that person tends to suffer. What I've always found magical is how the opposite is also true. Whenever someone gets their life together, be it through going to recovery or just making better decisions, the people around them tend to improve as well. Not only do they have healthier relationships, but they have tangible proof that change is possible. It's undeniable because they see it right in front of them. So when Nick made the decision to get clean, he not only changed his course in life, but the lives of everyone connected to him, including his band.
I think that with my decision to stop drinking, I think initially for the guys in the band, it was a hard pill for them to swallow and to understand initially. It's not that they weren't supportive. They just, I guess, because of how hard we had been going for years with the partying and everything and whatnot, like, I think to see somebody within the camp like just slam on the brakes and come to a screeching halt and just, say, I'm not going to do this anymore, I think that it was initially kind of hard for them to understand. But honestly, I feel like it took not even like a week or two for them to just realize, I understand, like, you're definitely not drinking. I respect it. I remember specifically, actually, I was in Australia when I decided to stop drinking. I was on tour, and I remember like 4 or 5 days in of not drinking, and Jack, one night, we were just kind of talking about it and how I felt so far, 4 or 5 days in, and he looked me straight in the eyes and he said, he's all, dude, I bet you don't drink ever again. And it was interesting for him to say that to me, but it wasn't something that I really thought about until later on, that I think everyone in the band really, truly realized how serious I was about it. And it wasn't like, I'm just going to stop drinking today, but tomorrow it's on, it was like, no, like, I don't want to drink, like, I'm done. And I think that by me slowing down, that changed the dynamic of everybody in the band. I think that it helped to have somebody within the camp that wasn't egging it on, that wasn't feeding the fire, and that if somebody didn't feel like drinking or just wanted to chill, they knew that they could come to me, that, we could just chill and watch a movie instead of going out drinking, or, let's go get some lunch, or let's go get a nice dinner and just chill. And I think that kind of helped the others realize, like, I don't have to party all day and all night every single day. Like, I think once they saw how healthy I was getting, both physically and mentally and emotionally, that kind of helped the others kind of refocus on that too. And that in itself has been rewarding, I guess. And that wasn't something that I consciously made an effort for, like, by me stopping drinking, it was for myself. It wasn't for them. Like, that was my selfish decision, but ultimately it really helped the band and it helped the others. And that feels really good to know that, because I love all those dudes to death. So seeing the partying and seeing how hard it was through sober eyes, like, it really kind of floored me initially, because I realized, like, I was doing that. And once you see people kind of really going hard and going for it, ultimately you start getting concerned for people and what they're doing. And I'm just grateful that I have the support of the band on tour, because, it's easy to party every single day. It's the easiest thing to do. So for them to be supportive of that and not trying to force that on me, like, I appreciate the hell out of them for that, and I love them.
You are kind of like the band dads, so it makes sense that if you make the step in the right direction, the others would follow in their own ways.
Yeah, they literally call me dad. they call me dad on tour. And hey, if that's the term I'm gonna get, I'll take it. I'll be the dad. It's all good.
Yeah, I mean it's a term of endearment, at least in that scenario.
Of course,
it's fine. Yeah,
of course, yeah.
Well, man, I want to know when you think back. Something I like to ask people is, do you still recognize the guy, the Nick at the height of these issues, or does that feel like a lifetime ago, just already 2 years into your sobriety? Like, can you even imagine yourself being mentally at that point where you were in, let's say, the early 2010s?
Nah, dude. Like it's really, honestly, it's difficult sometimes to but sorry.
You're fine, man. Take your time.
It's it's definitely really interesting to see like old photos, and it's I can, I can see it in my eyes, like I can just look at some of those photos and just, honestly, the like seeing myself in like my worst state, like I can't ever see myself getting back to that. And that's like such a good thing. Like that motivates me and inspires me, it's hard because I never want anyone to have to experience that or feel that way, and I use it as fuel for myself to just continue doing what I'm doing. And honestly, it's important for me to see those things, and I can't see myself going to that place ever again. And it's definitely been really eye-opening, and it still is, as you can tell, like it's always going to be something that I've experienced, but it's hard to know that I've also put others through shit because of my drinking, because of the decisions I've made, and I can only move forward from those situations positively. And I've learned so much from these 2 years of not drinking, and I'm really proud of where I've come and what I've accomplished in those 2 years. And yeah, that person, like, just, it seems like a lifetime ago, like thinking back on like my worst, like it just seemed like it was a lifetime ago and I was a different person. Yeah.
Well, I love that, man. Well, we only have a couple more questions for you, and I'll let you get on with your day. Hopefully a happier day.
Oh no, it's totally happy. Like, it as I get emotional about it, I like am so proud at the same time, like, and it's because it does mean that much to me. And I know how positive that choice has been for me. And so I hold it like really, really dear, and yeah, it's not that I get sad when I see those photos. It's overwhelming for me emotionally sometimes just to see that and just to know that I wasn't at my best,
No, absolutely. That we are processing emotions in a healthy manner here. We're all about it.
Absolutely. Oh yeah,
okay.
I love it.
It would be a lot less strange maybe if we were in the same room together, because now I feel like I'm making you cry through the phone, which is always a little weird for people, because you're like, oh man, I'm just that's fine. No, I'm here for you.
I'm just an emotional being. Like, yep. My wife always points it out. Like, I cry at every movie. I cry during commercials. I'm just an emotional guy.
I cry during commercials and movies on an almost daily basis, especially this time.
I'm not alone.
Watching so much.
I'm not alone.
No, constantly. And there's this moment that'll happen. I bet the missus does this to you as well. Is that she'll just look at me because she can like sense it coming, and she'll just be like, "You're about to cry again, aren't you?" It's a cartoon. I'm like, I know, but look at the emotional journey.
It's so true.
Yes,
it's so true.
yes, that's me. All right, man. So the last key questions that we always ask people. With you being on your 2-year anniversary, I'm curious, when's the last time you had a craving for alcohol, and when's the last time you felt genuinely tempted by it?
Good question. I haven't really had temptations per se, especially like on tour. I think that more so it's actually, I remember like after the first week of not drinking on tour and just seeing it or smelling it on someone's breath, like almost like made me sick. So there hasn't been any temptation. I think that I remember we were at Slam Dunk overseas, we were doing a festival, and we were starting to do a bunch of festivals around that time. And I remember everyone being like, is it gonna be tough for you to be around? Because UK festivals and Europe festivals, it is like full blown rager party, like all day, all night. After the show, there's after parties. Like it's as wild as you want it to be. Surprisingly, even in that insane of a setting, like I didn't have that temptation. I think that a big part of it is once the day that I decided to stop drinking, like I really was at my wit's end, and I viewed that there was no other options than to stop. So I just stopped like dead in my tracks, and I've been fine ever since. And the more and more I don't drink, the less there's any sort of temptation from my end, I guess.
What about craving? No, there's no real desire at any point. You're not don't think about it. I don't know. Is the missus sober as well, or is she someone that still drinks?
She had stopped drinking shortly before I did, but she did it in solidarity with me, and I always thank her for doing that because she didn't have to do that, but it meant a lot to me, and just having someone alongside. I always told her that if she wanted to drink, she can totally do that. But no, like she doesn't, there's no like cravings. We just, I think that we have really focused on our health so much that taking steps backwards, we just don't want to do that. We want to continue to just pursue being healthy,
I think the goal of every great musician is not only to be understood by their fans, but for their fans to feel like they have a close, intimate relationship with the artist. That's the kind of thing that goes both ways. So when a band is writing about their hardships and the personal traumas they've experienced, they want their fans to feel comfortable sharing their own. And in the case of Sleeping with Sirens, Nick's band, that's exactly what's happened. In every city, on every tour, fans come up to Nick and the other members of the band and they tell them their personal journeys. Some stories are triumphant, but others are very bleak. Sometimes there's abuse, or addiction, or a combination of things that are almost hard to believe. And at the end of the day, after the show, the band gets into their van or bus, and their heads are filled with all these stories, all these struggles, and all this pain that people are experiencing. That's a heavy weight to carry, and I'm curious how Nick manages it, but also how the rest of the band does as well.
Yeah, that's actually a really good question, dude. And you're right. It can be really heavy at times. It can be a lot. We've definitely had some interesting moments with people, and when they're sharing their stories, and sometimes stories that have been shared with us have been jarring to the point where we have to really be cautious. Kellen and I have really worked together really well with how to handle situations that become heavy. I think it's been really important for us to be really careful and cautious with our words, because there's many times that we've had to tell fans, like, we love you, we're so stoked that you're here, that you're getting through what it is that you're going through, but we do want to reiterate that we're not professionals. We're not we are not therapists, and we say it in a kind and loving way, but we're able to direct those conversations and say, like, there's nothing wrong with reaching out to organizations that can help you find people to talk to about what you're going through. And it's important that you do. And, we've reached out to therapists and to professionals to help us in times of concern, in times of need, in times where we need help. And it's okay to ask for help. And we're really just careful about what kind of quote unquote advice we give to people, because like I said, we're not professionals. And with our fans, with them being, a lot of them being younger, I feel like even more so, we have to tread really lightly with how we speak to them and the advice that we give them. It can definitely be really, really heavy. There's definitely been many times that people have come through and people will tell us their stories and it'll leave us in tears. I think that we really show a lot of empathy towards our fans and what they've gone through. And I think that they know that when they come to a Sirens show, that they're around others, including ourselves, that have experienced traumatic events in our lives that have shaped who we are today, good and bad. And we're living examples of human beings that aren't perfect, and we still experience trauma, and we still experience things that we don't necessarily know how to navigate through, and that's okay. And that fortunately, there's lots of outlets that can help us get through those things. And, for me, like being in therapy, that's definitely been an insanely healthy outlet for me to better myself. And I feel like it's really important for me to continue moving forward and spreading the good word on that, and that you're never too young or too old to reach out for help when you need help, and that it's okay.
That's great to hear, man. I think that's really solid advice. I was thinking about that this morning because I was like, this is a band that sings a song called "The Strays" all the time. You have to imagine the stories are heavy.
They are really heavy. They are, but
that's the beauty of it. I mean, that's why you guys are able to retain such a big audience, is because you share this vulnerable side of yourself.
Yeah, and that's like what makes our band a family. That's why we consider all of our fans part of our family. Like, they feel comfortable with us and they know that they're not alone. And dude, like, there's no better feeling in the world than having a platform like this and being able to help people in any capacity like that. I always say, like, I could die tomorrow the happiest, proudest human being in the world, knowing that I've been able to help anybody, to help somebody, and to be able to do that through music is, dude, I could never put a price on that. It means everything to me.
As someone that has known Nick for over a decade, I cannot tell you how happy it makes me to hear how much his life has changed for the better over the last 2 years. But I can tell you that the same is possible for you. Whether you're going through addiction right now or you know someone who is, there are people out there that are rooting for you to help influence positive, meaningful change. You possess the power to make things better, and we're here for you. We're rooting for you. So if you feel like you're all alone or that you have no one to turn to, please reach out. And our partners at Heartsupport and the Global Recovery Initiative will help you find programs and teachers and counselors and someone just to listen to you if that's what you need. Until next time, my name is James Shotwell. High Notes is produced and edited by Landon Defever. The theme song was written by Ben Leach of You, Me, and Everyone We Know, and our artwork was created by Nick Ferran. If you want to find out more about the show, search High Notes or High Notes Pod on social media, or visit highnotespod.com. We have more episodes coming soon. We hope you'll stick around to enjoy them.